with me to stage. I'm not going to be talking throughout it, like stop, start and things. I'm just going to let it play. If you see me disappear, it's because I've got to do something else, but I will be here and try and catch up with everybody. So I'll just go ahead and play this now for you.
All right, good afternoon. Again, I'm Jennifer Homendy, and I'm chairwoman of the National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB. With me today on my left is John DeLue. He is a new board member with the National Transportation Safety Board, and he's here on his training launch. To my right is Doug Brazy. Doug is our investigator in charge, or IIC, as we refer to the investigator in charge. Again, he's a senior aviation accident investigator that has been with the board for 34 years. So today, as I mentioned yesterday, today's our full first day on scene, and we have a lot to cover. In fact, we started the morning with a 2-hour meeting just to organize our investigative groups and walk through what we needed to accomplish today. Fortunately, the entire NTSB team has arrived. Like I said, yesterday we had significant delays with investigators getting here due to backups of TSA lines. And in fact, I understand that this press conference had to move because the lines were actually wrapping around the building. But I do have a lot of investigative information to share today. First, as I mentioned yesterday, we were able to take possession of the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder. That was at 9:57 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Our investigator, our local investigator, had immediately began a trip down to our headquarters in Washington, D.C. to take the CVR and FDR to our labs for downloading and for analysis. We do have some preliminary information to share from the final 3 minutes of from the cockpit voice recorder. And again, I just want to say it's preliminary and is subject to change. And for that, I'm going to turn that piece over to Doug Brazy.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
This is going to be terrible.
The airplane was equipped with an Akron Aviation model Survivor 2.5 cockpit voice recorder and an Akron Aviation model FA2100 flight data recorder. The cockpit voice recorder contained more than 25 hours of good quality audio across 4 separate channels. The flight data recorder contained approximately 80 hours of data and recorded more than 400 parameters.
Wow.
The NTSB will convene a cockpit voice recorder group scheduled for tomorrow at the NTSB headquarters in Washington, D.C. to review the accident flight recording and produce a written transcript. The following is a summary of events captured on the cockpit voice recorder during the final 3 minutes of the recording. All times are referenced to the end of the CVR recording. 3 minutes and 7 seconds prior to the end of the recording, the approach controller instructed the airplane to contact LaGuardia Tower. At 2 minutes and 45 seconds, the flight crew lowered the landing gear. At 2 minutes and 22 seconds, the flight crew checked in with the LaGuardia Tower. At 2 minutes and 17 seconds, the LaGuardia Tower cleared the airplane to land on runway 4 and advised that they were number 2 for landing. At time 1 minute and 52 seconds, the flight crew set the flaps to 30 degrees. At 1 minute and 33 seconds, the flight crew set the flaps to 45 degrees. At 1 minute and 26 seconds, an electronic 1,000 call out occurred from the enhanced ground proximity warning system, indicating that the airplane was 1,000 feet above the ground. At 1 minute and 12 seconds, the flight crew confirmed that the landing checklist was complete. At 1 minute and 3 seconds, an airport vehicle made a radio transmission to the tower, but that transmission was stepped on by another radio transmission, and the source of who made that transmission has yet to be identified. At 54 seconds, the flight crew acknowledged that the airplane was 500 feet above the ground and on a stable approach. At 40 seconds, the LaGuardia tower asked which vehicle needed to cross a runway. At 28 seconds, Truck 1 made a radio transmission to the tower. At 26 seconds, the tower acknowledged that radio transmission. At 25 seconds, Truck 1 requested to cross runway 4 at taxiway Delta. At 20 seconds, the tower cleared Truck 1 and company to cross runway 4 at taxiway Delta. At 19 seconds, an electronic 100 enhanced ground proximity warning system callout occurred. At 17 seconds, Truck 1 read back the runway crossing clearance. At 14 seconds, an electronic 50 callout. At 12 seconds, an electronic 30 callout. And at that same time, the tower instructed a Frontier Airlines flight to hold position. At 11 seconds, an electronic 20 callout occurred. And at 10 seconds, an electronic 10 callout occurred. At 9 seconds, the tower instructed Truck 1 to stop. At 8 seconds, there was a sound consistent with the airplane's landing gear touching down on the runway. At 6 seconds, there was a pilot transfer of controls from one pilot to the other. And at 4 seconds, the tower again instructed Truck 1 to stop. At 0 seconds, the recording ended. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Mr. Brazy had mentioned that 6 seconds before the end of the recording, the pilot transferred controls. We do know that the first officer was flying and transferred control to the captain. With respect to aircraft rescue and firefighting operations, we will be developing a timeline of events. We do know that they were responding to a United Airlines flight 2384 at the gate, which had 2 aborted takeoffs, and the ARF, or the Aircraft Rescue and Firefighters, had received information that there were fumes or a smoke or some sort of smell in the cabin, so they were en route to address that. Truck 1, which Mr. Brazy had mentioned, had collided with the aircraft. We do know that there were other vehicles behind Truck 1, which did not begin to cross the runway. We have seen varying information about how many vehicles, so we need to verify that information, and we'll provide it at a later time. Truck 1, however, did not have a transponder. With respect to air traffic control, we have seen different information about how many certified professional controllers were in the facility. And we need to verify that starting with interviews this afternoon. We'll begin to interview the local controller at 4 o'clock this afternoon. We do have logs, but there's also conflicting information, including dates and times on the logs. So now we have to go through that and rectify some of those inconsistencies. We do, however, know that there were 2 people in the cab, 2 people in the tower cab at the time of collision: the local controller and the controller in charge. Again, local controller and controller in charge. For those who may be watching and aren't familiar with aviation, the local controller manages active runways and the immediate airspace surrounding the airport. That local controller had signed on at 10:45 and the shift would have ended at 6:45 a.m. That doesn't mean that he was in position at 10:45, but that he had just signed in at 10:45 p.m. The controller in charge is responsible for safety of operations, all safety of operations. He had clocked in or signed in at 10:30 p.m. And that shift would have ended at 6:30 a.m. Again, that was signing in at 10:30 p.m. The controller in charge was also doing the duties of the clearance delivery position. That the clearance delivery controller provides pilots with their departure clearance. It is not clear who was conducting the duties of the ground controller. We have conflicting information. We have some information saying it was the controller in charge. We have some information saying it was the local controller. The ground controller duties are that they manage all aircraft and vehicle movements on the taxiways, and that generally excludes active runways. So these two positions were combined into two positions. And what we do know is that that is in the standard operating procedures for LaGuardia. It's for the midnight shift. It's also common practice across the national airspace where you would have two controllers in the tower cab during the midnight shift. The midnight shift, as a reminder, is one that we have many times at the NTSB raised concerns about with respect to fatigue. Again, I do not know. We have no indication that was a factor here, but it is a shift that we have been focused on in past investigations. Now, we also know, as I had mentioned yesterday, that LaGuardia has ASDX. ASDX is a runway safety system which allows air traffic controllers to track surface movement of aircraft and vehicles. Yesterday, I mentioned that we requested from FAA the ASD replay of the event. That is a replay of the display of information that would have been available in the tower cab. We also asked the tech center for the analysis of ASD. Their analysis shows that the ASDX system did not alert. The analysis, and I'm going to quote the analysis here. I will repeat it a second time. ASDX did not generate an alert due to the close proximity of vehicles merging and unmerging near the runway, resulting in the inability to create a track of high confidence. Again, the analysis is, quote, ASDX did not generate an alert due to the close proximity of vehicles merging and unmerging near the runway, resulting in the inability to create a track of high confidence. Now, I saw the replay, and there were two targets, so radar, because there's no transponder, you have radar. So two targets with radar returns on taxiway Delta. What it looks like on a replay are two blobs on taxiway Delta. We also don't see any of them go in front of the plane on the runway. We do also know from the replay that the runway status lights were functioning according to the replay, but we still have to verify that with tech ops from the FAA. Now, I do want to address one thing, which is reports of distraction. I have seen a number of reports from press about distraction, whether there was distraction among controllers. Look, I would caution pointing fingers at controllers and saying distraction was involved. This is a heavy workload environment. You had a United Airlines flight. We still have to determine what happened at shift change, which was around 10:30. We have to determine who else was in the tower and the facility and available at the time. We know that controller was still on duty for several minutes afterwards. Normally, they would be relieved. We have questions about that. Was anybody available to relieve that controller? We don't know that yet. We also have questions about what else was occurring, what other traffic they were dealing with at the time. So one thing I will close with before I take questions is we rarely, if ever, investigate a major accident where it was one failure. Our aviation system is incredibly safe because there are multiple layers of defense built in to prevent an accident. So when something goes wrong, that means many, many things went wrong. And so here, that's why we're here. We're here to prevent this from reoccurring, prevent this from happening again. And that's going to take some time. So with that, I will take questions. I ask that you raise your hand, state your name and your affiliation. So there's a little bit of a difference in the question is on combining positions, because we saw the combining of positions in the midair collision that occurred near Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport about a year ago. Our understanding right now, and again, this is preliminary and subject to change. Our understanding is that in the DCA midair, there were procedures followed, a list like traffic volume, staffing available, training, workload that was considered in order to combine positions like the helicopter position and the local control position in DCA. In this situation for the midnight shift, it is standard operating procedure that they only have two on duty, and those two perform the duties of other controllers. That is our understanding right now. However, we're going to further dig into that as part of our investigation. Certainly, I can tell you that our air traffic control team has stated this is a problem, that this is a concern for them for years, that they have had this concern for quite a long time. I can understand it's a concern, especially if there's a heavy workload. Well, the question is, how upset does it make me that ASDX didn't work? Because we've repeatedly recommended that ASDX work. Well, in order for ASDX to work well, you have to know where ground vehicles and aircraft are. So in this case, that vehicle did not have a transponder. And it would have been helpful when you have a radar, radar target. It does not provide you with the information that you need like it would for an aircraft as a controller. Yes. Is there any indication from the CVR that the pilots saw the fire truck on the runway? I don't have information at this time on that. However, we are doing further analysis on our cockpit voice recorder. We have a group that we have formed that will analyze the CVR. And part of when they analyze is they will talk in the group about what they're hearing, what they've heard, any sort of background noises, and we'll provide a transcript, and then we'll release that publicly. So we'll know more then.
With regard to the midnight shift, is it literally a midnight shift that you expressed concerns about it in the past, or is it sort of that later shift when there's typically less traffic at an airport? The reason I ask it is around this time, late at night on a Sunday night at LaGuardia, there's still lots of arrivals. To that degree, does that raise questions about the protocol and staffing here at this airport?
Well, so the question is about the shift, and are we just concerned about that shift in the past, or would there be other shifts? And does it make sense to have two controllers in the cab with such a busy airport, and this be sort of standard operating procedures and common practice across the national airspace? I think I restated it accurately and have now forgotten what you asked me. But on your standard operating procedure, on the standard operating procedures, look, LaGuardia is 900 flights, I believe, per day. That's pretty substantial. It's not the same as other airspace or other airports across the national airspace. That's certainly something we will look at as part of this investigation. How that would that make sense? You know, why would that make sense at LaGuardia? We will, that is part of our analysis in this investigation. And what was the other one? Oh, on the mid shift, we have identified the mid shift generally as concern in other investigations, largely due to fatigue, because it spans that time frame at your circadian low during your the day when you're most fatigued. Yes. The question was, could there potentially be confusion among the two controllers of who's having what discussion, and could it be that they were both having the same communications, or different communications, or conflicting information communications, since they're doing more than one job? I can't answer that right now, because that's something we have to investigate as part of this accident scenario. Those are the exact types of questions that we'll ask when we interview the controllers, both the two that were in the cab at the time and the other controllers that may have been on duty, either and include previously or after that. One thing I want to do is come back to something that Pete asked about, which is controllers and the information they should have. And as DX in our past recommendations, controllers should have all the information, the tools to do their job. All the information they need. We've recommended ASDX, but you have to have information on the ground movements, or, you know, whether that's aircraft or vehicles moving on the airport, in taxiways, on runways. They should have all the information. This is 2026. You know, the secretary talks about upgrading our air traffic control system. We have an old air traffic control system. This is why he talks about that. We need to upgrade, but we also need to improve safety across the air. It's not just air traffic control, it's safety all around. Yes. Okay. With respect to transponders, the question is it common for ground vehicles to have transponders? I don't have the latest figures on that. I would suggest speaking with the Federal Aviation Administration on that, or you can contact Eric and we'll get back to you on numbers. Should they? That's something we'll determine as part of our investigation. I will tell you that not having a recommendation, yeah, they should. Even though we don't have a recommendation, air traffic controllers should know what's in, you know, before them, whether it's on airport surface or in the airspace. They should have that information to ensure safety. Now, that's not an NTSB recommendation, so I want to be clear, but it could be. We don't know. And your other question on stepped on, the communication was stepped on, interfere, it means it may have been a mic key or some sort of interference or interruption of the transmission. Because somebody else on the other, why would that be significant? He was asking the question on what does stepped on mean with respect to communications. That would be significant because that would mean that somebody may not hear the other part of that communication. Yes, sir? No. Oh, go ahead.
Does the data recorder give any indication that the pilots made any attempt at evasive action?
And you're probably asking about the flight data recorder. We don't have information, the download from the flight data recorder yet. That group, I believe, is getting together today to start going through the data. We do have good data, but they're going to start looking at it today, and we'll provide further information down the line. You and then you.
Similar to that question, page from the New York Times, was there any evidence that the truck tried to swerve or brake across the runway?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Can I confirm the names of the pilots who passed away? No, I would refer you to the New York City Chief Medical Examiner. We don't confirm any fatalities, injuries, or names. And your other question? With respect to the truck, did the truck turn and brake? I've probably seen the same CCTV video that you have. We have to do some further investigation on that, including interviews of both firefighters that were on board. And right here. The question is, do we know if the two firefighters in the firefighting vehicle heard the directive to stop? We don't know that yet. We need to do interviews of those two firefighters. David. The first question on other technology that would have been available to alert to the controllers, I don't have that to provide at this time. Our investigators have to begin their analysis. Again, this is our first full day on scene, and we're not even through the day, but we will have more information on what types of technology have been available to them. The second question is on whether ADSB in and out would have helped prevent this. I would just caution, and I've heard the discussion on ADSB in and out with respect to this particular collision. It happened very quickly. And we need to match up times. We need to look at visibility with respect to the airplane coming in, and look at the movement and visibility of those in the truck. So we can't say at this time whether that would have made a difference or not. One question.
Any indication as to why truck one did not have a transponder when other trucks did?
And let me clarify. The question is on transponder on that truck. We have no indication there were transponders on any of the trucks. But there are transponders on other trucks at other airports, across the nation. In this case, they did not have transponders. Thank you.